Has India's energy security been reshaped in last 11 years, where global markets have been volatile and neighborhood uncertain?
See, I think any assessment on our energy situation in terms of where we stand today is significant, not just for the last 11 years. That's where the work was done. But I think it assumes even a larger salience and significance if you look at the last post-47 period. Why is it relevant for the larger period? I don't think there has been any point in our history before the Prime Minister assumed charge where we have looked at issues of energy with this kind of a sharp focus. Let me explain to you. Between 2006 and 16, we had another government till between 2006 and 14. We had entered into a large number of contracts which I'm having to face the legal ramifications of that, and we're winning most of them. Things came to a grinding halt. I'm not trying to lay the blame on anyone. What happened is that you entered into contracts which resulted in disputes. Dispute went into litigation, and there was a bringing the whole thing to a grinding halt. Therefore, between 2006 and 16, you virtually did no exploration and production. What is it that signifies energy security? What constitutes energy security? You must have availability at all times. You must have affordability and sustainability from our point of view. But you had a situation prior to 2014 where E&P, we were just nibbling at our sedimentary basin. It's the Prime Minister who took certain decisions after that. In 2016, we went from revenue sharing, from production sharing contracts to revenue sharing contract. 1 million square kilometers out of our 3.5 million square kilometers, which was a no-go area, was opened up. In the 9th round of the open acreage licensing policy, 38% of the bids came in that 1 million square kilometers. And I'm more than certain, I'm sure, that when we get the bids for the 10th round of OALP, open acreage licensing policy, most of them will come in that 1 million square kilometers opened up. Where were we on biofuels in 2014? I'm jumping. Availability, affordability. We were just blending about 1.5% of our overall crude oil and petroleum with biofuels. We had a target of 10% by November 22. We did that 5 months in advance. And we have a target of 20% for 2030. We brought that 5-6 years in advance. So biofuels we've moved. We've moved on exploration and production. For the first time, I can look you in the eye and say, yes, we've actually found oil and gas. I mean, small finds, but there is a dynamic to the world of exploration. I mean, the latest big find is Guyana, where, they had to dig, I think, 45 or 46 wells offshore, each costing $100 million. It is on the 47th well that they struck oil. I have always been of the view, and there are many in the government who share my view, that there are many Guyanas waiting to be found in the Andaman Sea. You get one Guyana, this country will be the lead economy in the world, not just third or second. It can do wonders for us. But let me tell you what went wrong before 2014. I think there was a unhealthy, maybe not written, but a collusion between the government and parts of the energy sector. Today, and when we inherited 2014, the situation, most of the international oil companies had got fed up of us. They had gone away. We are bringing them back. One of them is signed up with ONGC, BP. They're trying to re-energize and rejuvenate the Bombay High wells. They're very optimistic about it. Petrobras of Brazil is providing technical services to Oil India in order to be able to do seismic surveys. So E&P is going up, biofuels are going up, enough availability, government cut its own revenues to bring down the prices, came down by 13 and 16 rupees on account of two reductions. So Today, energy, I can tell you, and I've not even spoken about green energy, which is
So this is the roadmap for energy affordability because we are import dependent?
No, we are doing both. You would ideally like to do it all yourself. But if you have had a lost decade between 2006 and 16, you couldn't do it. If I see, there is one thing, it costs a lot of money to dig a well, $4 million onshore, 100 million offshore, but it has a gestation period of 8 to 10 years. What I do today will really start fructifying in 5, 4, if you're very lucky, 4, 5, 6, 8 years of time. You need a lot of money. People have to invest. So we've revised our laws. Our existing legislation was 1948 vintage. It covered both the coal mining and other mining and petroleum leases. We've got a separate law. We put it in the public domain for consultation. We took it to Parliament. Parliament, both houses have cleared it, and now even the rules and regulations under that have been cleared. So new legislation, willingness by the government to tweak in order to bring in collaborators, both domestic and foreign, massive moves on biofuels, very good beginnings on green hydrogen. We've floated one of our companies, IOCL, 10,000 tons of green hydrogen tender, and I think it's one of our own companies which won it. So these are good signs.
So a lot of people would like to know, when will the fuel prices come down?
No, I think those who want to know when they'll come down should first applaud the government that they are actually the lowest in the world. The government reduced the excise on 2 occasions, November 22 and May 23. They brought down the price of petrol and diesel. They reduced the central government cess. BJP governments reduced their VAT, and petrol and diesel prices came down by 13 rupees and 16 rupees. So they're down. It's a very valid question. I would be tempted to ask it also. But first of all, I think we need to understand how petrol prices are determined at the bunk. Cost of extraction per barrel at the point of production. Cost, add to that insurance, freight, refining margin, dealer margin, state and central taxes, and that's how you get a price. Today, petrol and diesel prices are amongst the lowest in the world, perhaps the lowest if you compare, produce similar, as they say in trade term, similar products. You make adjustment for exchange rates, etc. And exchange rate is a very important factor because a lot of your 50% of your gas and 80+% of the crude is imported. If crude prices remain as they are, in the range between $60 and $65, my friend, I can tell you, prices will come down. When? I'm not a soothsayer. It's not the government which sets the prices, it's a deregulated sector. Yes, government has a encouraging role to play. Government can felicitate, and the government does that.
That's a good news. So what are the strategic dividends of Operation Sindhu?
Well, in order to really understand Operation Sindhu, you should look at the history of 1947 and beyond. There is one country, one part, and I don't want to make this a foreign policy interview, which has used terror as an instrument of state policy, which has consistently tried to undermine the more successful part. These are countries, 2 countries born from the womb of the same mother. Okay? What happened is, because of the nature of the partition, the people who were involved, I would say, and with a degree of regret, that the full measure of what constitutes an act of terror was not understood, and the governmental response prior to the Modi era, prior to 2014, was characterized by a degree of, we don't have choices. In fact, one of my colleagues wrote a book, Choices, and said, strategic restraint. Yes, you need strategic restraint. But if you go on misbehaving with someone and that person says he's exercising strategic restraint, your capacity and propensity to misbehave is only going to go up. So what happened here is, prior to 2014, I remember that fateful evening when the 26/11 attack took place. I was actually at a private function hosted by a very well-known person. When on the TV you saw Mumbai burning, and on that dinner table at that stage were very important people, including some who are in leadership positions in the opposition, and it was business as usual. And that gentleman, after sitting there for that dinner, went to a party in the farmhouse. I'm not naming anyone because I don't want to make a political interview. But I had at that time on the table with me Shri Brijesh Mishra, somebody who used to edit a newspaper, one of the existing editors of the newspaper. Many people told the story. And what did we do after that? What did we do after that? But come the Modi era. So today you made it clear to the world that you are responding to an act of terror. And please understand fully the ramifications of what constitutes terrorism. There's no such thing as a good act of terror or a bad act of terror. I mean, some people will justify it by saying, you know, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. It's a very different context. If you go and kill innocent civilians, I think there is only one answer. That you ought to be taught a lesson, a new template needs to be set, and Operation Sindoor is that. The response was swift. It took 22 minutes and 9 places. Is not my assertion. I know about this press, somebody claiming something. Forget about that. The empirical evidence of terror havens in Muridke, in Bhavalpur, in the Noor Khan Air Base. This has been made available by commercially, put in the public domain by commercially available satellite imagery, which is there for everyone to see. No one can deny it. Is there any imagery on what has happened on our side? Little allegation. I don't want to get into that. Let me tell you, if you have a thinking government in Pakistan, I'm not so sure, I'm made in that country. With Modi ji in power, I would think twice before doing something else. Because the entire range of instruments which are at the government's disposal, they have not been used yet, they could be used. And this nuclear blackmail, this, that and the other. I mean, there's a country where does not have electricity. I was about to ask this,
has Prime Minister Modi called off the nuclear bluff?
Well, I wouldn't say. I think he's sent a very powerful signal that we will not be subjected. And therefore, you know, I don't want to go into more details. You should interview the foreign minister. But on the energy front, they put off their electricity at 8 o'clock in the evening. They don't have electricity. There was a big clamor. You should hammer them a little more. But, you know, I think the Prime Minister has both the wisdom and maturity and the sufficiency of the message. Well, and I think it's a very powerful message to anyone else. You indulge in behavior like that, you'll get it back.
Let me take you to a subject which is close to you. How has the delivery, the last mile delivery, improved and empowered women in the last 11 years?
Oh, I think it's one of the best stories we've got. Every program of the Prime Minister, all the central schemes have women at the center. Let me start with Swachhta, the building of toilets. But let me start with something even more basic. What was happening before 2014 is India was growing. You can grow a country, but you can also make sure that that growth results in deep-rooted divisions. Let me explain. You can have a GDP going up, but it's not being evenly spread. Women, who not only constitute 50% or more of our population, for the first time found that all the central schemes had them at their center, not in the periphery. That's why when you went in for women's reservation, where you went from women-centered to women-led development. Let me explain it. Swachhta scheme and the building of toilets. Don't go into whether it's 13 crores or 14 crores. That's a significant and admirable number in and of itself. There's something more serious. It's the dignity of the girl child. Young girls, if they don't have a individual household toilet, what we call IHHL, or a neighborhood community or a racing toilet, you go out into the fields in the rural areas. Okay? Number one. So the biggest beneficiaries, I think, in this Swachhta scheme and the building of toilets, it's not about numbers. I think when you convert a government scheme of the government to a scheme of the people and you have a Janandolan, you've already done something revolutionary. Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, all right, 4 crore homes being built is huge. When you give that number, 4 crores, what, 40 million? 40 million, countries don't have populations of 40 million, I say. A lot of countries in the world, 6, 8, 9 million population. Here you build 40 million homes. But in whose name is the title of the home? Name of the lady of the house. If this is not women empowerment, what it is? The Ujjwala scheme, everybody talks to me about, and I'm partly responsible for this narrative. I think we should nuance it. People turn around and tell me, "Or bada sasti gas dila raha hai." Arey mere uncle, it's not that sasti gas, it's something more. When we had 2014, we had 14 crore cylinders. But Kartikeya, they were primarily urban allottees. You could get a gas cylinder in a city. So Modi ji did two things. We moved from 14 to 33 crores, virtually saturating the entire population, length and breadth. But when you introduce the Ujjwala scheme in 2016, 80% of those 10 crore plus allottees of Ujjwala are in the rural sector. That is the beauty. You've taken it now, you've used the Prime Minister's scheme to unify, to take development down to the grassroots level. Let me give you a small example. Whenever we used to talk about connectivity, what was the connectivity? Railways is the only one which went into the railway. But today, every state, every district wants an airport, every state wants an international airport. Number of airports has gone up from 74 to 150 something. Let me give you another thing. That was the preserve of the elite. But Udan, where you provided a viability gap funding for sectors or for particular areas, now people don't even think twice when they book a seat. The railways is still the world's largest public transport provider in the world, the Indian Railways. But you look at the airports, I mean, we have been able, thanks to the Modi development doctrine, you have taken development and the benefits of development, technology. I mean, every Indian, no matter which far-flung, has got a mobile phone. If you look at the increases in internet users, if you look at the education, the startup sector, you know, how many IITs earlier, how many IITs now, how many IIMs then, how many All India institutes then, and how many now. So this is a model of comprehensive transformational development. But at the bottom of it is the most important statistic. You've taken 250 million people out of multidimensional poverty. You have a population of 140 crore, and out of that 25 crore of people who were in multidimensional poverty, the poorest of the poor, they've been lifted out.
In your opinion, what has propelled us to become the fourth largest economy? It has happened.
That is GDP growth. That is GDP growth. But I'm saying something more. That GDP growth is important because you've moved from 10th to the 4th position.
Correct.
But it's also important because your growth in the last quarter was 7.4%. And you are expected to do 6.5% plus, whereas all the other economies with which you're competing are at 2%. Of course, if you're a $19 trillion economy and you're growing at 2%, still a lot of money. But the third largest economy, Germany, we will overtake it. Not because we are doing well. They are just now at a much slower rate of growth. So you'll be the third largest economy, if the IMF is to be believed, in a year and a half's time from now. If you believe me, I mean, I think it's going to be earlier. But in addition to the growing of the economy and the GDP, you've done something much more. You've taken the fruits and the benefits of that development down to the last person. You see, Antyodaya and Sarvodaya, I mean, this is to take it right down to the last person. So today, the same gas cylinder, which provides ease of living, is now accessed in the farthest of rural areas.
A lot of people wonder that, growth, reform, fiscal prudence, and a big Labharti politics. It has all happened at the same time. How has government been able to...
In fact, one is help the other. You should also talk about capex. Because little capital expenditure. Listen, when we were facing, by the way, I should say, I mean, behind you I see a screen. Today, one of the highest railway bridges in the world over the Chenab has been inaugurated. Absolutely. What are we discussing? We are discussing, I mean, I have always maintained that democracies, they're the best form of government you can have. They're also the most difficult to run because you are judged on the basis of your daily performance. Today, thanks to the kind of world we live in, not people who like me or people who support me or people who like or support the government, your record of development related activities is in the public domain on a daily basis. So today people say, oh my God, and any little thing going here and
Meeting
there.
the deadlines?
Huh?
Meeting the deadlines?
Not meeting the deadline, doing things before time. There was a time when I remember I was the joint secretary in the defense ministry. I had a minister who used to say, "Hey, iska foundation stone lay kar dete hain." So I had to folded hand say, first get a budgetary provision, find out what timeline, find out how long it will take to contract, to bid, etc. Today, your Kartikeya Path, your parliament building, Bharat Mandapam, made in record time. Always there will be cost overruns, minor, because the international price of steel has gone up, cement has gone up, but all within the range. This is what I call development with a sense of renewed focus and total dedication.
It's a generic question, but I thought I must ask this. What has been the Prime Minister's biggest contribution in the last 11 years in reshaping India?
Well, you know, this Prime Minister, you can't talk of the biggest, because he has several mind-boggling. Our reclaiming our civilizational and historical pride. I mean, let me be very clear. There was a time I used to think when I was a civil servant, why are we being defensive about who we are, about Hinduism, Sanatan? Why are we being defensive? No, that pride back. Now visitors come, they visit the Ram Mandir, but I'm just citing one example because it's more current. But more than that, he's taken the economy from the 11th position. It was just before it was around the 11th position, 10th position, and he's brought it to the 4th. But it's not just brought it to the 4th. It's not that I've run this race and I'm exhausted. This is momentum ongoing. You will be the third largest economy. Well before 2029, India will not only be the third largest economy, but will be the third largest economy, leaving the 4th and the 5th behind by a distance. I mean, that's my take on it. When I used to talk about a $5 trillion economy, people used to say, "Ye pata nahi kahan se aa jata hai foreign service wale bahar ke." No. Today, $5 trillion is not even a consideration. Today, all of us are talking about $7 and $10 trillion. You became 4.3. From 2014, you doubled your GDP from 2 trillion to 4.3 trillion. So, reclaiming our civilizational
Heritage?
Pride. Heritage is there. Varanasi, God knows how many thousand years is old, and you're combining it with that. That is the beauty and the greatness of India. Your GDP is growing, but it's not GDP. You're giving content and meaning to those who had been left out. You know, the Sustainable Development Goals, which the UN started, they said, what is the purpose? To take development to the farthest. Modi ji did that before the Sustainable Development Goals came into being. Those Sustainable Development Goals started in 2016 or something. If I don't remember, I'm not mistaken, about 15, 16. Modi ji had done it in 2014. All his schemes, you see, he got elected in May 2014. By 2015, June there, most of them had been rolled out, and in all incorporate the vision of what the SDGs in mind, but we have gone further. You take the fruits of development right to those who need it the most. Well, most vulnerable, the street vendors. During the pandemic, if you were working in a news studio, you would still get paid your salary. A civil servant would get his salary. A person working on the fields would still, even in a semi-feudal system, will get paid. That poor chap who used to go and borrow every day from, greedy money lenders and come and sell because the economy had come. I don't know how many people have benefited from the street vendor scheme. 68 lakhs. And it's a scheme of micro inclusion. You borrow 10,000, return it, take another loan for 20,000 and go up. And they are all now in the happy situation of having become beneficiaries of the other government schemes.
So I asked this question to you because at the time of COVID, you did a 4-hour, if I'm not wrong, Facebook Live. You know, during Operation Sindoor, fake news and false narratives really became a headache.
They will. In any operation, they will.
They did. So is it going to be an important issue for us to tackle the way during the time of COVID when you
see? Let's first of all, there is something called narrative. There's something called nuanced narrative. There's something called false narrative. There is also something called psi operations. I think we are too close to the event. I have full confidence that, including my distinguished friends in the Fourth Estate who went a little overboard, that whoever did that overboard going will realize where you have to correct, etc. And I can tell you, you have a very good story. The military operation was a spectacular success. The narrative came in, individuals, this, that, and the other. Fortunately, I don't have responsibility for those portfolios, but it will be corrected.
Let me bring you to a subject which is close to you. In last 10, 15, 20, 30 years, Vidarbh used to be part of a regular coverage, whereby, there would be a news story that so many farmers committed suicide. So how has ethanol blending prevented it? And how was this thought about?
First of all, if you don't hear about, I don't want to say that the problem, agrarian distress issue has been solved. I'm not saying that. But today, what the Prime Minister has done for the agricultural sector is good. But today, I'm only going to answer before we conclude this part. We have given over 1 lakh crores to the Indian farmer thanks to the ethanol blending program. I'm merely saying that. Baki, higher prices for MSP, the kind of false narrative, you're talking about false narrative on Operation Sindhu. What about the false narrative on the domestic agricultural sector? I've never come across, people sat with me in the cabinet, and when the farm laws came, said, Kamal hai, badhiya ho gaya. 3 days later, went topsy-turvy. You know whom I'm referring to, I won't take the name. Believe me, with this Prime Minister, 11 years of solid development at the center, and that work he had done in Gujarat, he's been at the governance over 22, 23 years, if I'm not mistaken. Today, the country has confidence. Our development is anchored in firm policies. During the COVID, I skipped this because we were going too fast. We had many choices. A lot of people said, "Arey, ye bhi baant do, wo bhi baant do." Wo bhi kiya. I mean, something like 81 crore people are getting handouts under the Prime Minister Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. But we chose, instead of handouts, we chose the method of capital expenditure. Capital expenditure will, essentially in infrastructure sector, capital expenditure will result in money not going wasted, not pure consumption, and yet you can feed your consumption. The fact that your energy sector is doing well, that is how you're able to, because of the revenue collected. By the way, my OMCs provide about 19% of the country's revenue. That's why you can carry out all these schemes which I mentioned.
And my last question, before we close in the interview, how has been your experience of an aspirational district? You have been minister.
I'm very, very, very fortunate. I had adopted a district called Sonbhadra, and when I was given that district, it had a ranking of 112 out of 112. Today it's in the top 2 or 3, and sometimes goes up, comes down, but it's in the top 2 or 3. And I'm very privileged to be associated with it.
Congratulations, and thank you for speaking to us. Thank you, sir.
Darkness in the silence of the night, where the roads carry.
Let there be dark. Scorpio and Carbon is here, the big daddy of SUVs.
Is this politics of appeasement?
That is the ground reality.
The violence continued unabated for the next 24 hours. Why is there Mamta for Pahalgam but not for Murshidabad?
Everyone in Pakistan is saying that India has punished us. We are all agreeing that Operation